Hi, my name is Michael Robinson. I'm the Associate Creative Director of the Houston Cinema Art Society. Thank you so much for staying tuned for our Q&A with some of the filmmakers for the Borders, No Borders narrative shorts. I want to give a special acknowledgement and thanks to one of our supporters of the program, Indie Media Arts. It is my pleasure to introduce some of the amazing filmmakers featured in the lineup. I'm going to go ahead and bring them along to introduce themselves. If we can welcome our three filmmakers joining us. Who wants to start?
I'll go.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Xenia Matthews. My short is called A Few Things I'm Beginning to Understand.
Hi, my name is Sidi. My short is called Lucky Girl.
Hi, my name is Nirav Bhakta, and my short is called Thank You, Come Again.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Where are y'all calling in from?
I'm calling in from the Dallas area.
I'm calling in from Beijing, China.
I'm calling in from Houston, Texas.
That's nice. I just want to start off and see if you can go around and kind of talk about the origins of your projects. What was kind of the inspiration for your work, and how did it kind of change from your initial inception of the project? We can start in the same order. Xenia, if you want to go first.
Yeah, my short started off as my thesis project in school, and they were like the themes that I handle in this short had been like brewing around in my head for a little while. But it really the catalyst that made me want to start exploring these topics in like a real tangible way was I went to school in Philadelphia, and before I sort of moved back home uh, during the pandemic, me and my boyfriend, we were living together, and right before the pandemic, December 2019, he got arrested in the park basically for dancing. It was two cops harassing him at first, and they called for reinforcements, and he just sort of disappeared that night. And just everything that also transpired after that like really got me thinking about just how I could address like the way that anti-Blackness affected our relationship and our mental health as a unit through my art. And I had like a really extravagant vision in the beginning, and it ended up extravagant, but like in different ways. The film that I made is like just pieces of just moments and pieces of things that I sort of came up with and then just figured out how to edit them together. And it's like mostly unscripted, like most of it is just like me improving and sort of talking to myself and like figuring out these difficult issues, but with costumes and makeup and like fun segments that shouldn't be present when you're talking about these serious topics, but that's just like the lens that I filtered it through. Like it's very me. Like I have a very colorful and fun perspective, but there's also these like very weighted, very heavy issues that I have to navigate as a Black woman.
Cd, do you want to talk a little bit more about yours?
Okay. Lucky Girl was also my it was my undergrad thesis project at UT Austin, but it was inspired from an experience that I had in high school because I came to the States in high school and went to I was in suburb Philadelphia, and I was there for 3 years and lived with a host family, and they have two kids adopted from China living, and they have like three or four kids of their own. So it's a really big family, and I was also a high schooler at that time, so I didn't like think too much about that. But I did discover that the two Chinese girl, one was pretty sensitive and shy, and one was more outgoing. And when I was thinking about thesis project, my heart leaned more towards the more introverted and more sensitive girl. And like thinking back how she reacted around people, and like made me realize that there might be something worth to explore in her that many people might neglected from like adoptees. So I remember there will be times when they go to like supermarkets, like those Asian supermarkets, and there will be like Asian women like come up to her and telling her that like literally like that like you're lucky to have your mom like that. So that made me realize maybe that people hurt her feelings the most might be people that actually look like her. So like that's kind of the theme that I wanted to explore from yeah. So it started from that point on. Yeah.
For Thank You Come Again, first of all, I'm a formerly undocumented immigrant, and I grew up in Houston, Texas, in a post 9/11 world, when I guess the inspiration of the film came from a time or a feeling right after 9/11 where South Asian Americans were seen as either comedic caricatures or as terrorists. It was this weird in between place, and for me as an undocumented person, it was really a place of just confusion and not belonging. Um, it was just a very muddy place to kind of grow up as a young teenager, and uh, a lot of it did affect me in ways where like, okay, our business fronts would get tagged with like hate slurs and whatnot, or we would have to put American flags on our backpacks or our business fronts to prove our patriotism. Um, uh, and so yeah, for Thank You Come Again, I really would just wanted to explore what that feeling was, and I wanted to explore the void of what it's like to be separated. Uh, it's just a space that people really don't explore on film, and especially like the undocumented experience from a South Asian perspective. Um, I don't think it's ever really been told on screen, especially from an undocumented perspective. Uh, so yeah, this film in particular, I really just wanted to have fun and experiment.
Mm-hmm. And I think those themes that all of you are bringing up really come through with each of your works. I think both about drawing from personal experience and something that is very that sounds like it took a long time to unpack, and a lot of things that have traumatic bearings in them, as well as like having that creativity and something that it sounds really singularly from each of y'all's voices. It would really came through and just left such a lasting impression. I did want to ask y'all that process of digging into the personal and putting personal narratives on screen and figuring out what is the entry point, how to frame it, how does it need to take form? Because I think each of you really play with form in different ways in your work. How do you kind of come across what that need to look like in the finished product? And kind of how much of those experiences were something that you wanted to make sure were put on screen versus, in the inception of the project, made that idea that there's some things that were better left not included. We can start going the same order if we want to.
For me, I found that trying to make a traditional narrative, or even in the film, I guess like my character or I say that it's much harder to make a consumable narrative out of this story, just because of like I was like trying to reenact things, and like my boyfriend wasn't comfortable the entire time, and it was just like a very mentally and emotionally difficult process to go to try and make this sort of like understandable or like traditional, or something that people sort of had the language to understand, versus something that might challenge the viewer, because it was challenging for myself. So Like, I sort of pivoted from, like, having this, like, very reenacty, just sort of, like, recap of events more to, like, the emotional, like, the inner happenings, like, the stuff that nobody sees when you go home, and, like, I sort of, like, pivoted from that, like, retelling towards, like, retelling in a way that alludes toward the future and also centers healing and love rather than trauma and loss. And I think that pivot really enabled me to complete the film because I don't think I would have completed it in any other way. Because like a lot of those voice memos that I include, like a lot of the very like the hyperventilating and the crying, like those are my real like voice memos. Like I like can't listen to those voice memos like anymore, but like those are from the time, and those are from like me just recording my experience of trying to make this film. And then I'm also making it in the pandemic, so I'm mostly making it alone. Like mostly everything that you see on screen was done by me, like the music, the costumes, and makeup, like all of it. And it was like such a lonely process. And like in addition, like my boyfriend was thousands of miles away because we had to move apart. And it was just very hard. Oh no, Sidi dropped out.
Oh no. But she'll join us soon.
Yeah, she'll probably come back. But yeah, I probably wouldn't have completed it if it wasn't as experimental as it was. Just being allowed to explore instead of saying like this, like instead of like presenting facts, I think presenting questions was an easier way, as well as a more artistically interesting way to complete this film.
Mm-hmm. So like, let's see if CD is.
Yeah, I'm back. Do you
want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I think my biggest difficulty, since it's based off of a true story, I kind of find it hard to find the balance. Like I don't want to hurt the feelings of my host family because in order to tell a short story, you kind of have to portray them in a way that is kind of stereotypical. Like some behaviors that like some like I don't know, but as ignorant to some of the cultures and stuff. So, but like in real life, actually, they're really lovable and like really caring about their kid. So I was scared to actually first to tell them that I'm going to make the short and like want to get their permission first, so I don't feel like I'm like stealing their story without letting them know. And also I find it hard, and I also know at first that I wanted to make a more make it more documentary field, like narrative, not the regular like having back and forth over the shoulder conversation shot, that kind of. So that part was also hard because in order to have that feeling, you kind of have to make the conversation more realistic and like having the actors more down to earth. So I made the film when I was in when I was a junior in college, so I didn't like that part was really difficult, like handling the young actors and and make everything work. Like there's like I look back to the film now, there's a lot of stuff I could have done better.
So that's fair. No, I mean, it's. I will say it's really wonderful, and even just I think you're having like the camera down to the level of the kids. It's like the small details that I think really show that level of like asking permission for the story and being like so empathetic that you do so well.
Thank you.
For me, I think similar to what Xenia said, I also went like the experimental route, and I think I went the experimental route because it's hard to articulate what that experience is like, right? There's not enough words or emotions or feelings where you can directly take an audience member into your life and into your shoes. And I think that's a lot of like weight to put on your shoulders, especially when you're trying to find your own voice as a filmmaker or storyteller. So I did go the experimental route. And when it came to sharing some of these like darker emotions, I think what happened in the trend post 9/11 was like it went from terrorists, it went from laughing at brown people to then like you're the terrorist, you're the dangerous person, and then came like a different period where many of our stories became like, oh, you're now going to laugh with us. So we were now all of our narratives were put into a box of just comedy. So for me, um, my life experiences are very heavy. I can't help it. I also have lots of love and light and all that stuff, but these specific moments that happen that as immigrants we were taught to just kind of keep quiet and not shake anything up. Don't bring attention to yourselves, especially as an undocumented person at that point. Um, there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to express and say, and I think with this film, I was liberated in some ways to be unapologetically me and share this experience that happened. Not that this film is true to my experience, but the emotions, the feelings that the film has, they're true. You know, there's some of my worst nightmares. There's some of many people that I know their worst nightmares. Um, so yeah, I think when it comes to digging from personal, um, it's a great way to anchor yourself in story. But beyond that, I think as filmmakers, you have to experiment. You have to kind of let everything go and say, you know what? Now let's get to the next place. How can I elevate the story? My foundation is there. The feeling is there. But how can I elevate this to another place? And I think that also comes with being a performer. Um, Having trained as an actor, I think it really helps me as a filmmaker because I understand the rhythm and the emotional pulse of story on a much more intimate way. And for this specific film, I anchor that again into emotion, and then I try to just lead it from this character's perspective and their point of view. So, you know, the film deals with this undocumented convenience store clerk who's going through the 5 stages of grief, essentially. And so it had to be character driven. It had to be from their perspective. So I utilize those personal experiences to then uh, question how do I travel with this person through the 5 stages of grief. And I think having one location really helped focus that. Um, Not everyone may get it, and it's okay. Uh, but I use every single aisle of the convenience store to basically travel through the 5 stages of grief. Um, but yeah, I think a major thing for probably all of us as filmmakers is, yes, they are personal stories. They come from a place of truth. Um, but at some point, you have to be open to letting the story become what it's supposed to become. Because sometimes if you try to anchor it uh, too much to the T of exactly what happened in your life, it sometimes can be, you know, detrimental to what actually is on paper. Um, so I try to surrender myself to the process of filmmaking, and once it's off the paper, what does it feel like when it's on its feet, right? What does it feel like when we're filming, and then what does it feel like when we're editing? So I try to start grounded in a foundation of a place of personal truth, and then just let it all go.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, each of your films really gets at, I think, kind of was talking about before is, that there's a notion of, this is an experience that, like, how do we tell this? But the processing to be like, what are the aesthetics behind this? What are the politics of those aesthetics? How much are we going to be on the screen versus not be on the screen? All really present in a way that just, it syncs with the emotions of the film so well. And I think that's why they just resonate so much, really allow you to not only know the story, but to feel the story. And that there's like the sense of embodiment that you really get of like connecting emotionally to something where that there are things that y'all as storytellers are feeling that are not explicitly telling the audience, but that they feel too. And really be able to articulate that experience.
Can I say something though? I think also like as people of color, sometimes there's pressure put on us when we're writing to have to explain what our experiences are. And I think the beauty of like all these filmmakers here today is that when we're getting very, very specific in our own experiences in our own culture, that in itself becomes universal. And I think that's the transfer between the personal truth that you're trying to put into your project and connecting that to an audience and how they receive that emotion.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. That kind of gets a little bit into the next question, just about like sense of place for this. And I think that's, one specific aspect. This competition itself is called Borders No Borders. I'm specifically talking about, it's multi-layered, but also, just about the regionality. And I think, not specifically being so didactic as to be like, what does a story of the region look like, but opening up and like really asking, what are the stories from regions, and how are we defining regionality, and how are people being associated with places, and what is like authentic and not authentic, quote unquote, and not getting tied to like, you have to say you're from one region and you have to spend so many years at a place, or you have to have this experience, or you have to like feel a certain way. But I wanted to kind of open that up to each of y'all as creatives to talk about what is the relationship to your work in sight, in terms of like place or placelessness, and really, having y'all speak to what is that relationship for y'all, and is it something that is kind of, evolving in your work, or something that you really wanted to make, something that can be, that doesn't have to be tied necessarily to a specific location, but is, saying that something can be more amorphous, and that's okay.
I think as it pertains to my film talks a lot about like the body versus self, like what's going on internally versus what is perceived about you externally. And I feel like that dichotomy is sort of about like, you have like a physical, like you take up physical space, you have a physical place in the world, but the events that like go on inside, like in your heart, your soul, whatever we want to call it, like they are real events as well. And that's sort of going to what Nirav said about people of color like having to explain themselves before like, and it's not like actually a thing. Like we can watch films from different experiences without having everything told to us. But like myself, when I was being like critiqued as I was making this film, like people said, maybe you should show more violence, maybe you should show like more police brutality, and you should show like more exploitation of Black women's bodies, and so on and so on and so on. And I'm like, why does that need to be in there for you to understand what my perspective is? Like like there's this place that there's like the physical space that we occupy, and then there's these things that I feel like in films people of color aren't always afforded, which is like our internal processes. Like we're never going to look inside of their head or really fully embodying their subjectivity. Like it's all about like what they can do or how exceptional they are and why they're not like the other ones or something like that. And that's what like a lot of movies and popular culture like focus about, or we're making jokes of ourselves and not taking our internal processes, our mental and emotional health very seriously. So I feel like my film just sort of, I guess you say placelessness. It's not really tied to a place. It's more tied to like the inner workings of the two subjects in the film, which are me and my boyfriend.
I think for me, I also, since it's about this little girl's really sensitive feelings of finding her identity, I also wanted to giving like spaces in the film like kind of a timelessness and also like placelessness like feeling. And I, since the story was inspired by experience in Philadelphia, and I had to shoot it in Austin. I do find that like finding locations and like trying to um, copy the exact stories that I had was kind of impossible. But so I for story wise, I kind of to find I wanted to find like places that people from different backgrounds all understand, like kind of symbolic places like the Chinese buffet. And I do find that like pretty similar across the states, right? Like the interior and like the decoration of that place, I find that very interesting because it's kind of like fake all around. Like from the food to the decoration is all very stereotypical. The impression that people have for China, and that's kind of become like a symbol of like um, what um, what adoptees or Asian Americans are living like. They kind of living under the impression that people have of them in the States, and not really their own culture, or they don't even know about like their own, well, what their true culture looks like. Kind of like the theme of the film, like the girl, like not um, the moment when the girl finds out that the buffet doesn't serve real Chinese food. So yeah, I think that's basically it. Yeah.
I think for me, placelessness is like my life. I was born in Central America. I was raised in the United States, but I'm fully blooded East Indian. So I've never been too much of one culture or the other. Like in India, I'm not Indian enough. I'm in America, I'm not American enough. In Panama, I'm not Panamanian enough. So like these themes are inherently a part of me and a part of my storytelling. I like to tell stories and perspectives of characters who are in between cultures and in liminal spaces. Um, Borders, no borders, cultures. It's all been transient in my life, and um, I think specifically for this film, um, that placeness is even in one location. I tried to bring it in as much as I could. How is this person trapped under the weight of somebody else's American dream? And uh, something that I really wanted to kind of explore, and I am going to explore in my feature film project, um, is the southern border. And when we associate the southern border, we only think about people that are migrating from Central America or from Mexico. And the truth is, so many cultures, so many people from around the world make that journey. And sometimes, if not, it's even more deadlier. And I've had family members who have made that journey personally, um, and out of just pure desperation to be reunited with their loved ones. And um, I really wanted to explore that in this film. And the question was, how do I bring that into one location? So what I literally did was like I bought lots of sandbags from Home Depot, and we literally dumped the convenience store floor with sand. We packed it with sand, and we just brought in like dead brushes and stuff, and we brought the desert inside of the store, which also in the film, as the character is going through the later stages of grief, like depression and acceptance, he's actually imagining the last place where his father might have been, which is the southern border, and also the place where his father died. Uh, so to kind of mess with that psychology of placelessness, I brought the desert into the store, and how that affects my character.
Fantastic. I had so many other questions, and I definitely want to talk to y'all offline about them, but we're running a little bit out of time. But this has been phenomenal, and thank you all so much for being here and spending your time with us. I do want to make sure that people can still keep up with y'all's work, really make sure to continue to follow your journeys, whether it be this film or your next film, like the feature you mentioned. If you can go around and just kind of say, maybe if you have a website or something, or some other projects that you're looking forward to that people should keep an eye out for.
Yeah, my website is muxeum.com, which is MUXEEUM. It's like Z, like my name in the middle, muxeum.com. And this is my personal Instagram. I haven't started my business Instagram, but it's at glassdick. Don't be offended.
Yeah.
Did I freeze?
You did freeze a little bit. Okay. If you want to give one more go,
okay.
It froze specifically at that moment, which is kind of perfect. But I do actually want to get your full Instagram and hear everything you said. So if you want to at least repeat the Instagram and everything after that.
You said I froze after Instagram?
Yeah, you mentioned your Instagram handle and then everything after that I did not hear.
Okay, well, at glassdick is my personal Instagram, and you can follow me. It's a Frank Ocean reference from when I was in middle school, and I'm not changing it.
Incredible.
But yeah, I just post most of what I'm up to. Yeah, all the festivals I'm in, so check it out.
Perfect. What are you, CD?
I need to start building on my website again. Yeah, but like y'all can find me on Facebook. It's just my name, and my profile picture look like this. Yeah. And yeah, I'm mostly working on documentaries in China right now, and I made a film last year about like my time during quarantine at home, and it was called A Peaceful Divorce. It was about my relationship with my dad and my mom. Yeah, and that the information to that film should be online, and there's some like interviews about that too. Yeah.
Very nice.
I also don't have a website yet, but you can find me on Instagram at my first name, last name, Nirav Bhakta _555. As far as projects, my film prior to Thank You Come Again, which was called Halwa, we just left HBO, but now we're going to Disney Plus in India. And maybe there might be another platform in the States. And then my film that just came out a couple months ago, it's called To the Letter. It's an animated short film. It's playing on CBS.com or I think YouTube. And yeah, I have a couple things in the workings. I have a documentary short that I started a long time ago with one of my co-directors. It's about a trans sex worker who also happened to be undocumented. We're hoping to get funding and granting from the Austin Film Commission. Hopefully that will happen, and that'll probably come out next year. And beyond that, I'm very focused on my feature film. I am writing away, and I hope I'm able to film it here in Texas and have it premiere in the next few years.
That's incredible. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, y'all are up to so many amazing things. I really want to check all your projects out personally. And again, thank you so much for joining us. The films are streaming for a week after you watch this, so continue to check them out. If you want to follow up everything Cinema Art Society, it's at Cinema HCX. And we hope to hear your feedback. Oh, and also there are 2 different cash prizes for the winners of the narrative shorts. So stay tuned for our socials for that announcement. Until then, hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.